together with us today, we have very honorable guests. We have Zipporah Chege, and who is the Chief Financial Officer of ICEA Lion, and Mr. Willis Genga, who is the Associate Director of KPMG East Africa. So over to you, Zipporah. You can introduce yourself.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dennis, and good evening, students. So like you've heard, my name is Zipporah Chege. I'm married. I'm a mother of two boys. One is 3 years old and another one is 1 year and 8 months old. So you realize I got quite a lot on my plate. Like Dennis has mentioned, the CFO, ICEA Lion General. I've had 12 years experience with Deloitte prior to joining ICEA Lion General. I'm also a certified engagement and productivity coach with CDI Africa. I'm a founder of a company called Stars and Sparkles. I'm a partner at Exezin Associates. And in terms of qualifications, I got a master's in business administration, BCom accounting, CPAK, and an ISPAC member. In terms of what I love doing, when I'm not doing all these other things, I love reading, swimming, traveling, movies, walking, and baking. Thank you.
I wish I had a whole slide, but I volunteered, I think, earlier today to just jump onto the call. And so it's a pleasure to be speaking to you guys this afternoon. As Dennis mentioned, I am an Associate Director at KPMG in the Audit Department. I also double up as the Head of Technology, Media, and Telecommunications in East Africa for KPMG. I've been with KPMG for about 15 years now. All of that 15 years in the audit department, despite having graduated from Strathmore in 2006 with a bachelor's degree in IT. But having said that, by the time I was graduating, I'd also completed my CPAs. And so that's how I ended up in audit, and in particular, a Big Four, despite having an IT background. And actually, that's, I think, partly how I ended up joining KPMG. Prior to that, I spent 2 years still with KPMG in the US, in Chicago, still working predominantly on the media, telecommunication, and technology sector. So working on clients such as Accenture, Motorola, Emerson Electric, and so on and so forth. And so that also defines my portfolio in Kenya. And so some of my audit clients include, we're currently working with Safaricom. I've worked with our good friends at Zuku, Internet Solutions, Standard Group, some of my good clients. And so I mostly operate, despite being in audit and being an accountant, I mostly operate within the media, telecommunications, and technology sector. When I'm not working, I like to travel. Any opportunity I have in terms of time, together with my wife, I get on a plane. And so obviously, while I was in the US, I tried to travel across the different states from California to New York, New Jersey. I went to the South. I was I went to Mississippi to visit a friend of mine. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Dubai. I've been to Phuket in Thailand. I've been to Sri Lanka on a whim, and a couple of other places just from the top of my mind. And so, in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Thank you for that very nice introduction. Now we will continue with the session with Zipporah, giving her a brief summary of her professional journey in basically insurance, and to also give us an insight on how it is to climb the corporate ladder. So over to you, Zippy.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis.
Welcome.
So I started off my career, I was fortunate enough to be picked by Deloitte from campus back then. So I didn't sort of like, tarmac as would call it. So I started right from the bottom as an audit associate. I was sent to Mombasa for a couple of years. Deloitte had an office there. And later on moved to Nairobi. So I rose up the ranks from an audit associate position to a senior audit manager. On the 11th year, I got married, and a year later, I thought I needed out and, to just do something a little bit different. So that's how I found myself at ICEA Lion General. So I've been there now for 4 years. I'm the Chief Finance Officer, and I can say that so far I am loving it. How this career is and the challenges that we face, they are many. So as a Chief Finance Officer, half the time you find yourself making decisions that are actually not the most popular decisions, if I would call them that way. And at the same time, you have to be careful about how you say it, because you still need relationships with your colleagues. But yet again, you're going to have to check all sides of the coin. Do we have the finances to spend? How does this sit in as far as the strategic perspective of the business is concerned? So there are challenges in terms of just, walking the thin line, saying things that are not necessarily the most popular things, but it's also fulfilling. I think you end up being almost a number two to the CEO. You're the CEO's right-hand man, or woman for that matter. And to that extent, I would say that it's a very fulfilling job. With me is a team of about 16 people, an interesting and an excellent team. So that also comes with its fair share of challenges and joys that I have to deal with every day. So in a nutshell, that's what my career journey has been like.
Okay. Thank you for that. So as you were climbing the corporate ladder, what apart from how what you've told us of knowing what to say and how to say it to your colleagues, are there any other challenges that you'd like to share with us, even in being in the audit and insurance industry? Yes.
Yes, so there are many, and perhaps maybe I would just go back to my earlier life as an auditor. So definitely as an auditor, people look at you with a different set of eyes. What have you come to check this time? What sort of issues are you going to come up with, and how do those position their specific jobs? So some of the challenges I faced in my earlier life is just dealing with a whole lot of interesting clients. There are people who, you found out something and they don't want you to put it on the final report. And you have the back end push of, can you please just get this off? You're going to have to try and see whether we can deal with it. So I think integrity is at the heart of the challenges that I have faced on my career journey. And I would say just knowing the values that I stand for have sort of like made this easy to deal with, because it's clear when you know that this is white and this is black. And therefore just getting a nice way of communicating that, yes, I hear you, but still this is significant and it's gonna have to get reported. Some of the other challenges are also to just do with colleagues, even at the workplace. So the whole aspect of, proving yourself, you're a woman, you can still do it, even as much as you're a woman. And just also ensuring that you continuously build up your skills and remain relevant, because half the time, we depend on the skills that got us to the job. But you realize that CPA course, it was a good one, but really what needs to take you to the next space or to the next level is additional skills of dealing with people and navigating the corporate world, as I would call it. So those are just but a few of the challenges that I've had to deal with.
Okay. Can you briefly take us through your presentation before we ask you any more questions?
Okay.
Yes.
It's my pleasure to do so. So I just have a few slides. And basically what we're looking out for is just to have as much of an interactive session as possible. So our topic for the day is preparing for your career, and just getting right into it. So I started by saying, what are the things that I wish I knew when I was starting out? And I've listened to a YouTube video called Put God First by Denzel Washington. He was making a speech at Dillard University. And I'd recommend you to just get onto YouTube at your free time and just listen to that very inspirational, motivational video to those students who are graduating. And some of the key nuggets are just put God first. Half the time we've done our very best in school, but things just, you know, end up in a very different way. So just putting God first in your career. I know it's an interesting space. We all have sometimes different belief systems, but for me, I think that is one of the things that I consider to be important. The other thing is, don't just aspire to make a living, aspire to make a difference. And I know when we are graduating, you know, we look forward to getting a job, getting some cash to, you know, just get life going on. But half the time you end up in jobs that make you a very frustrated person. So it's not just about getting that job, but getting a job in a space that you know you will actually be able to make a difference. Sometimes I sit back and I ask myself, if I really had a choice, would I have chosen the career that I have chosen? Because we have a few of us who got into the spaces we are at because it's our parents that said, you know, look here, BCom is the place to be. You need to get your CPAs done. So of course there's that thin line, but you know, it's very important in the circumstances that you find yourself, you know, to find yourself working in a space that you can make a difference. Now, as graduates, we've been trained how to succeed, but the key question is, do you have the guts to fail? So half the time, you know, we are afraid of failure, but we forget that it's in failure that you actually learn some of the biggest lessons that you needed to take you to the next space. Dreams without goals are just that. They're just dreams. You need life goals, you need daily goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, etc. So it's very critical to sit back and ask yourself, what are the goals that you want to achieve, even as you prepare to get onto your career? And then think outside the box. There are so many people who will be graduating with you. You need to stand out and you need to be different. So at the top there, I have a quote that says from Nelson Mandela, there's no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one that you're capable of living. So that's a quote by Nelson Mandela. Now, purpose in life. So it's one thing to get a job that you're qualified for, but it's another thing to actually live out your purpose. So your life purpose consists of central motivating aims of life, the reason you get up in the morning, it guides life decisions, influences your behavior, shapes your goals, offers a sense of direction, and creates meaning. So for some, purpose in life also means finding meaningful and successful work. So Steve Maraboli said that you are put on this earth to achieve your greatest self, to live out your purpose, and to do it courageously. So I summarize this and say that you were born to make a difference. You were born with the ability to change someone's life. Don't ever waste it. So getting ready for the corporate world, it's a competitive space. There are hundreds or thousands of yourselves that will be graduating. And the question is, how do you stand out? You need to be seen, you need to be heard, and you need to be recognized. And the key question is, and not just seen and heard, but seen and heard by the right people. And when you get onto that job, you also need to grow and to advance. So it's more or less a survival for the fittest. You have to be able to survive in this corporate world. And that takes me to a topic that I really love, which is about personal branding. So this is about establishing and promoting what you stand for. Your personal unique brand is the unique combination of skills and experiences that make you you. So the things I've gone through as Zippy are very different from what you have gone through. So you need to be able to differentiate yourself from others in your field. You need to be able to convey a message that can enable you to actually be monetized. So I'd encourage you to find your uniqueness, build your reputation of what you want to be known for, and allow yourself to be known. So Jason Hartman said that your personal brand is a promise to your clients, a promise of quality, consistency, competency, and reliability. And the question to ask ourselves is, what brand are you communicating? Who are you when people interact with you? How is your dress code like? Do you show up on time for meetings? All those are facets of what we call your personal brand. And at the end of the day, it conveys a message about you that can be monetized or not. So let's then talk about choosing your first job. And here we talk about what are your interests. So you're graduating with an ICT degree, an accounting degree. What are your interests? There are so many spaces that you can find yourself working at as an IT professional or as an accountant. You can work in a corporate space as an accountant. You can work in a hospital. There are very many spaces that you can actually utilize these skills. So the question is, what are your interests? What options are also available for you? What growth opportunities are there? Now, one of the biggest mistakes that new or people who are getting into the corporate world make is the salary trap, where you find yourself choosing a job because it's the most highly paying job. Now, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to be the happiest person. So it's very critical that you avoid the salary trap. You also find conversations like, you need to find yourself in a particular industry to make it. So say people would say the IT or the tech world is a space to be. So that's another industry trap. And then there's the whole thing about the prestige trap. I don't know about where you're at, but when we were in campus, it was very prestigious to be picked by the big 4 audit firms. I mean, if you just got that job, people felt that you made it. And if you missed that list, people felt perhaps you were not very good enough. But the question is, does it mean that everybody who landed those jobs ended up being the happiest people that we know? Not necessarily. So the other thing to note also is that your first job is not your exact fit. It's more or less a stepping stone to where your destination is. So sometimes you might find yourselves in jobs and I mean, you're sure that this is not necessarily where I would have wanted to be. Just look at it more of a stepping stone to the next opportunity. So look for opportunities with highly transferable skills and experiences. Now, career and unlocking meaning in life. So jobs bring us money, they give us status. But the question is, does that job help you make a difference? Does it help you to follow your passion? Does it help you to use your talents? So please don't reduce your career decisions to the earning power. And if you do that, it's an excellent way of becoming one of the most frustrated workers. Money is good, we all work for it, but let it not be the only primary driving factor to choosing that job. Now, there's also the issue of status. So to what extent does it matter to you what people say about you? So don't find yourself in a job just for the sake of feeling nice and people evaluating you as having gotten it. Are you happy with it? Are you making a difference? What's important to you? So have you checked what opportunities are there and how they align to the interests that you hold dearly in your life? The other thing that I needed to talk about is building networks and the power of social currency. And the example I give there is where I'm currently working. When we need to fill a position, you will not necessarily find it in the newspapers. You will not necessarily find it on LinkedIn. But this information is found in people. So the question is, who is in your network? To what extent are you creating a network of people and creating relationships that will give you private information that is not publicly available? Networks also help you to access a diverse set of skills that you may not necessarily have, and networks also give you power. So this is the point at which you need to check what's on your social media. Who are you following, or who is following you? And one of the things I tell students is that for sure, when you come looking for that job, we will Google you up and see the kind of posts that you're making. They will help us determine whether you're really the serious person that you seem to be telling us that you are. Now, the other thing that I wished I knew when I was transitioning from college to starting working is looking for a job requires money. I didn't quite have to do the tarmacking, but I had friends who needed to do this. And I'll tell you that this requires money. You need money to look good. You need money for accommodation before you get that job. You need money to travel. You need money to print whatever documents you need to print as you go for those interviews. So please just have that at the back of your mind and save up if you need to, or think about how you can get some little money to take you through that process. Then there's a whole lot of, when you get that interview position, please don't waste it. Prepare adequately for those interviews. Not many people have been privileged enough to get that interview slot. So when you get it, please prepare adequately for it. Role play with your friends and let them ask you questions and ensure that you're ready for that interview. Now, finally, when you get the job, some of the real-time experiences that we are getting is quite interesting. I mean, you have people who easily burn bridges. There are stories of employees resigning via an email where they just type down an email and say, I'm done with this job and I'm gone. Please don't burn those bridges. You don't know when you need them. Nurture the relationships at the workplace. They are very critical. And in your network, in your job relationships, is actually where your wealth is. Now, the other thing to also consider, like I said before, is that the skills that you have now are not necessarily what you need to go up. So you need to continue learning. You need to continue being relevant. You need to continue finding out what are the skills that are really speaking to my current job and how do I acquire those skills. So it's a whole aspect of working hard, continuously improving, giving back. What I'm currently doing now is just giving back. So the skills that you learn, just give back, help someone else with it. And then never forget your humble beginnings. There are people who have held your hand to get to where you are. So always remember your humble beginnings. Now, finally, I have some 2 books that I would recommend for further reading. One is How to Find Fulfilling Work by Roman. I'm not able to pronounce the second name. And then there's Show Your Work by Austin. So if you could get these 2 books, they would largely help you in this journey. So Dennis, that's the brief presentation that I had.
Wow, that was amazing. It was really good. It was really inspiring. But I will have to pause on the Q&As for now, and then have Willis talk to us about his side of the coin, and then have the questions come at you collectively. So Willis, please kindly take the floor.
So what you'd like me to speak about is in terms of my career experience.
Yes.
First off the bat, I agree with everything Zipporah has spoken about. What I can possibly add is I think the importance of passion. And so even within the firm where I am, we've realized when you align assignments, when you align the work that we do to what the individual is passionate about, then you are more likely to get 150%. You don't need to chase someone around, and the people who you're working with come to work and enjoy what they're doing every day. And so when I look at my own career as an example, so in as much as I happened to do the CPA courses while I was at Strathmore, my passion has always been around technology. And so even when I came into audit and I was then figuring out how to be an accountant, my colleagues would always come to me when the question or the topic related to technology. And it's something that I would gravitate to easily without too much effort. And so as a consequence of that, even when you're doing the crazy audit hours and you're working on clients and assignments that fall into the things that you're naturally interested in, you have a higher chance of, number one, getting the position. You have a higher chance of succeeding when you get it. And you have a higher chance of being successful, where success in my mind is making a difference and going home at the end of the day and feeling like you've contributed something meaningful in the course of that day. And so overall, if there was anything I would add is figure out what your passion is, because when I look back, I think early in the days when I was in campus, I was very clear on the things that I did not want to do, but it's only later in life that it became clear what it is that I wanted to do. And so the big ask and the big job was figuring out what you want to do more so than what you don't want to do. The other thing that I jotted down on my notes as Zipporah was speaking was the importance of differentiating yourself, of determining what your brand is. And so as an example, in 2006, okay, this may not be a good example for guys who are in their final year, but in 2006, when we were graduating from the BBIT class, I was the only one in the class who had at the time I was completing, but there was no one else in the class who had even started the CPA course. And so when the big four came calling and we were all applying, there was a clear differentiator, at least amongst the BBIT class, where there was this one guy who not only had started, he was actually finishing. And that differentiation has continued throughout my career. And so at the end of the day, you're an individual. And when I look at when we all came into the audit firm and all of us were put into a pool from the different universities from across the country, when I spoke to the different people, so again, when I joined audit at KPMG, I was also the only one from Strathmore. And at the time, you had majority from Lower Kabete, you had people from Moi University and so on and so forth. And the theme that ran through all those people that we were sitting together within that pool, everyone had something unique or something different that they had done that stuck in the mind of the recruiter and enabled them to sail through the recruitment process to be where they were. And so you had a team of 15, 20 people who had, each and every one of them had a unique skill set. Each and every one of them had something interesting that they had done at a point in time to get them there. And so it's great to be part of a crew of 5, 10, 15 people. It's good to have a good amount of friends. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out what your brand is as an individual and what will differentiate you from everyone else who you're hanging out with. There's nothing wrong with hanging out with guys. I'm not saying you should not be friends, but as you do, don't be afraid to bring out your individuality, because that's who you are at the end of the day, and it matters as you grow in your career. And so that is the few things that I would add. Back to you,
Okay.
Dennis.
Yeah, that was great. I'd like to now open the floor to any questions. They can send them to me privately in my chat so that I can be able to control them. But even as you were both giving your speeches, some questions were already trickling in. So Jane Awar asked, what educational preparation did you feel, do you feel would be best as you prepare, like as you're finishing your degree? What educational preparation do you feel like professional courses take you a notch higher? And even now in your workspace, I'm sure you've all interviewed very unique people who've come from very different educational backgrounds. So what kind of skill sets in these professional courses do you feel that can give you the push that you need to stand out in the career? You can start, Willis, since you were the last one to speak.
So when I look at where we are at the moment, things keep changing. What we thought was very important last year. So let me give an example. When we were recruiting last year, the big topic at that point was blockchain.
Okay.
And the application of blockchain to accounting and even the auditing process. Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and everyone is working from home and so on and so forth. The skill set that I would be looking at today is number one, someone who can interview remotely. Let's start there. Someone who, if we said we need to interview you via Zoom, there's certain etiquette around remote or a virtual meeting. It doesn't require you to go and sign up for a professional course, but it's something you can have a course on LinkedIn or whichever places and get a certain basic set of skills that will differentiate you when we say we want to recruit students from Strathmore via Zoom. That's one of the things. The other things I think at the moment is there's a big effort on digitization. So looking at the government measures in place to restrict, to enhance social distances. And so there's a lot of emphasis on businesses and SMEs and the general economy to be able to deliver goods and services while social distancing. One of the ways that that can happen is through digitization. And so we are seeing across board banks, I would dare say insurance companies, fast-moving consumer goods, trying to see how they can digitize their route to market. And so I don't know if there's a professional course you can find that will teach you digitization, but within LinkedIn and whichever online course, there is content available on the internet on how you as a student can contribute in the digitization of any of the companies or businesses that you'd be interested in. And so when you're having a conversation with someone who's thinking of hiring you, a conversation around the digitization, and if you're able to demonstrate depth on that topic, is one way in which you can differentiate yourself. So the key is continuous learning, continuous improvement, being agile and adaptive to what's going on now, which might be different next week on Tuesday when the government restricts or eases the restrictions in place. And so that continuous improvement and continuous learning is useful, because even if you make that investment in doing a deep dive in digitization, that knowledge does not go away, even if the environment changes. The way it works is, as luck would have it, you will find yourself in a situation where that conversation is important and relevant. And so keep improving, keep learning, keep a pulse on the street and what's going on. And it's probably why I think this call is a good idea for you guys as students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zipporah, I would like to hear your opinion on this.
So I completely agree with Willis in terms of his contributions, but just to go back a little bit, so in addition to your degree course, it's very important that you get your related professional course done. So assuming your interest is becoming an accountant or a finance person, your CPAs or ACCAs are not a nice to have, they're actually a must have. So it's important to just ensure that your aligned professional course is actually also attained as you finalize your degrees. Now, talking about the finance world, we've heard about robots, we've heard about artificial intelligence, sort of like in conversations about accountants are soon going to be replaced by robots. I don't think that is a far-fetched idea. I mean, we already have reconciliations being done by robots. We already have a lot of the things that accountants would sit and get done being replaced by these technologies. So data analytics is a key conversation right now, because then as accountants, we transition from just giving the information to what does this data mean and how can we mine this data for use in the various businesses. So I'd also, in addition to what Willis has said, just recommend that if you get yourself a data analytics course, it will take you a long way.
Great. The second question was, in your university life, did you take in any co-curricular activities, and did they put you at a better place career-wise? Did they put you at the top? You know, because we all know that it's not only about the education, but also what more to you, what more are you as a person? So, Zipporah.
So I'm going to be very honest about it. In my days at college, so first I came from a very humble beginning. And when I got to high school and when I got to college, I knew that the one thing I did not want to do is to go back to my village. So I had to make it work. So I spent a lot of my time in books. I wouldn't say that I was very strong in extra curricular activities. Those are things that I have picked after I have started actually working. So playing golf, swimming and stuff like that are things that I've actually picked later on in life. But would those things put you a step higher than the rest of the people? I would say yes. There are organizations that are very keen, for example, on sports. So if you're a good basketball player, if you're a good football player, they would actually make a plus for you. So I would say if you have the opportunity to actually get into extracurricular activities, please just go ahead and get it done.
Okay, but have those extracurricular activities helped you grow in your career?
Oh yes, they have. Playing golf is one of those things that I would recommend. If you can just learn, you know, you find yourself playing the game with people that ordinarily you would never have met. You find yourself in a bathroom with a CS that you would never have met anywhere. So it gives you platforms and positions to meet the right people and to have the right conversation. So I would say, yes, they have.
Okay. Willis, can we hear from you?
Sure. Just to add on to what Zipporah has spoken about. So part of my KPI as I speak is a certain amount of co-curricular activities. And so the firm will pay for membership to certain clubs, golf clubs or private members club, for the purpose of engaging in an informal setting with your clients or with prospective clients. So there's an expectation that you will go out and play a round of golf, or you will go out and play or do ride a bike on a Saturday morning with a certain client who's passionate about that. And so co-curricular activity is important to the career. And when I look back, one of the things I was involved in, I don't know if it still exists, is the Strathmore Drama Society.
Drum song.
And so, yes, during our time, which was at the time nerve-wracking, we put together a play, a musical, for 5 days, twice a day, at the Kenya National Theatre, and that was in my 4th year. And I can't sing to save my life, but I found myself in a musical at the National Theatre. And what that did is, once those 5 days were done, there was a difference in my level of confidence. There was a difference in the things that I thought I could achieve. And as I was interviewing for KPMG, I can tell you for free, those 5 days, two shows a day featured in the conversation I had with the head of audit as he was recruiting. And so there were huge lessons learned in that exercise, as an example. So the ability to project your voice to an audience of about 300 people, because the National Theatre did not have a mic. And so you needed to be able to do that. And we were taught how to do that as part of that production. And so those soft skills do add up as you start your career in terms of those extracurricular activities in the school. And there's an expectation that you will continue with those activities as you grow in your career. Yeah.
Okay.
Back to you, Dennis.
Okay, great. That's really interesting. So another question is, I mean, you've grinded, you've worked till the top, but there's still this aspect of family and how you're going to, adequately balance work and life. So we'd like to hear your view on this. How have you been able to balance, your friends, your family, and still have your career going? Willis, let's hear from you.
Can I answer that? I have not been able to balance.
Because one question we've always been asking ourselves, when you're in an audit firm, you always hear rumors that, once you get into an audit firm, it's gonna be high pressure. It's gonna be very hard to balance, your work life. Even for Zipporah, when you get to, a certain level in the corporate industry, it's gonna be very hard for you to be able to, balance that with, with family. You're always traveling, even when you're in the United States, you're always, everywhere going to clients and everything. At the end of the day, you're going to come back home tired. How are you able to balance that? Now,
both myself and Zipporah starting our careers in audit, I'll be honest, past couple of years were not easy. The audit hours, as you know, especially early on in the career, are grueling. Being in the profession for as long as I have, I think a key ingredient in that balance of work and life is family. So having a family that is supportive, who when things are thick and you need to put in the hours, guys understand. They know what's going on and they are able to support you. What I've seen over the years is that important ingredient of having a support system. If that is in place, then you have a better chance of having that balance. If that is not in place, your chances are much lower. And so, again, going back to my days in Strathmore, being the only one in my class who was doing CPAs, a big thing that I remember is I would normally commit the last full month before the CASNEB exams to study. And the guys who are my friends and who are still my friends up to now knew that the whole month of November, don't look for Willis. Don't call him. You will not get him. He's studying for that crazy CPA exam. But once that exam was done, the next day, I would be 120% available. So those guys understood that this is something I was doing and this is a commitment I had made. And that's the support they gave me. They didn't give me pressure that, we can't find you. I don't know what. They understood that this is something I was doing. And again, as I went into audit, so I've been married 10 years. I started dating my wife in my first year at KPMG. Lucky for me, she is as busy as I was. And so there was that support system in place for us to be able to balance and work out that relationship. And so from where I'm sitting, I think that is one of the key ingredients in that balance.
I'd like to shift the tide to Zipporah. One thing you told us was that it reached a point in your life where you you got married and you probably have children right about now. So how have you been able to balance everything? You know, even as you changed your career, how was it?
So let me start by saying I think there's no such thing like work-life balance. I think it's more of work-life integration. So back then, in my audit life, I mean, there are nights where I would get to a client's office at 8 a.m., work through the day, work through the night, and show up in my house the following morning with the same clothes I went to work with the previous day. And the truth of the matter is, going up the ranks requires hard work. There's no easy way out. So I'd hate to paint a picture of you're gonna get there in an easy way. No. But one of the things that has really helped me is to learn to delegate as much as I can. So like I said, I'm a mother of 2 young boys. I got errands and things to run around in the house. And I'll give an example of every Saturday morning, I'm required to go out and bring groceries to the house. And I did that 1 day, 2 days, got to the market and found a very good vendor. And I just struck a deal and said, look here, these are the things that I need. I'll send you a message on Friday evening. Those things will be delivered at my doorstep. So it's about delegating the things that you don't necessarily need to get your hands on. When I became a new mother, I used to feel like, you know, I need to bathe my children, I need to feed them. And I would feel very guilty if I've not either fed them or bathed them. I don't struggle anymore. I just get someone to help me to do that. And the little time that I get, I'll spend quality time with those children. So I think it's more of just accepting that, first of all, time is limited and it takes a whole lot of time to actually, you know, fulfill your job obligations as well as your home responsibilities. But to the extent that you're able to actually delegate these things and get people to help you, just please take on the help. So if you look at how our lives are nowadays, we have our iPads with us, our emails find us right through to our pillows. And half the time when you just see those emails, there are things that you can't even sleep before you deal with them. So it's more of just accepting that this is what it is and just finding a nice way of blending the two.
Okay. Wow. Work-life integration. That's amazing. Okay, so we have another question from a person called Edwin. This question is mostly directed to Zipporah. Is there a career path to the CFO level, or is it mostly networking? I actually like this question because it's a common maybe rumor or misconception that there's a specific path to CFO. You have to go through all the maybe subordinates. You have to be at every level of the subordinates. So we'd like to hear your opinion on this.
So just read that question again. So you said, is there a particular path to CFO position or just
is it mostly networking?
So my perspective of it is just like anything else, you're gonna be strategic in what you're doing. So when I joined ICEA Lion General, in my team, I'm actually one of the youngest in my team. I have people who have worked there for more than 20 years, for crying out loud. And you know, you'd find that in those maybe 12, 10 years that someone has been in that role, the only thing that they did was bank reconciliations. And I'd look at them and I'd say, what a waste. So I think it's very critical for you to be strategic. And that's why in my presentation, I said that set out the goal. If the goal is for you to become a chief finance officer, then what skills do you need? Because I'd say for me, my stay at Deloitte made all the difference. Granted, I carried my laptop to the salon to continue working as my hair was getting done, but it counted. So the exposure in terms of even boardroom interactions, if you never got a chance to sit in a board meeting, it's gonna be very difficult for you to get those CFO positions. So I would say as you start out, have a feel of the organization you're getting into. Will it give you exposure? Not just one industry, but to different industries? Will it give you international experience? Will it allow you to interact with the right people? Because it's all about the networks. So is there a specific path? I'd say no. I know a few people who also just got into an organization and they were able to climb from one level to the other and they made it to the CFO position. But after 16, 17 years of working, I find it continuously easier for you to move from one organization. So say I'm a CFO of ICEA Lion General today. So say one of my aspirations is to become a CEO. So there are two routes to it. I could stick in at ICEA Lion General and aim for that CEO position. But remember, there's also a whole load of other people who are also aiming for the same position. Or while at ICEA Lion General, I could strategically use that position to take me to another organization and to get that CEO job. So I'm gonna say it takes strategy to also grow up the ranks.
Okay. I think the next question is mainly to Willis. There's a student that's saying, if somebody is doing computer science and concurrently doing a professional course like CPA and ACCA, and they feel like it's hectic, would you advise them to hold it off until they finish the computer science, or just continue with it as you did? How was your experience? What were the strategies you put in place to be able to balance between the two very heavy courses? Because you also did BBIT, which is not even a light course in itself, and then you had your CPA. So I would like to hear your opinion on that.
So my opinion is, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. If it was easy to finish, the entire class would be doing it. And so one of the ways is, so I always tell my teams, it's easy to be different. It's a totally different ball game to be better. And so one of the ways you can be different and better is by going through the trenches and getting it done and getting both done. And so my advice to those guys is to stick it out and try and push the professional course together with the undergraduate degree in computer science as far as possible as you can. Jumping on this side and looking at my portfolio, every year when you go to recruit, we are deliberately looking for engineering and computer science guys who have some exposure to accounting, because there are very few guys who have that kind of exposure and skill set coming out of university. And what we realize is more often than not, the engineer or computer science guy who has either finished or has gotten far away along the way on the professional course very quickly adapts, especially to auditing. And we have wonderful examples of when we get those guys, we get a huge return on investment. And so as I sit here, if you're a student who has a computer science, engineering related degree, and you also have a professional course in the form of ACCA or CPA, we are literally looking for you. There are not that many guys. But like I said before, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And so the ask on your side is see if you can get it done, because we are looking for those people. Yeah.
Oh, that's positive. Helen, I hope you're listening. You already have created a niche job opportunity for yourself right now, so you should actually follow Willis after this. And we have another student who's asked, as a recent graduate, how can you have a lasting impression at the workplace and prove that you can grow, you can grow to other positions. Like, as you've said, you have to stand out. So how do you leave that lasting impression that, these guys are like, wow, this person is, truly great. This person knows what he or she came to do in the organization.
I think when I speak to myself, I think the eagerness to learn in those early years. When I look at myself, it was because to some level, I was afraid. I had jumped into a pool of accountants. The only thing I had done is a CPA, but deep down I was an IT guy. So I wasn't sure I was going to pull this off. So I made sure I was very eager to learn. So I would make sure I understood what was required of me. I was very open to instruction in that first year. I tried to accumulate as much knowledge as I could as quickly as possible. So I tried to be an open book in those early years. And so what then happened is I found more and more people inclined to work with me. More and more people felt that this is a guy who, if I tell him to do this, he'll make sure he's gotten it, he understood, and that he'll follow through. And so that then built a differentiator and built confidence in my peers wanting to work with this guy. And then over time, what I found is I would find when my peers were trying to figure out something, they would come to me to ask me, hey, Willis, how do we do this? Because you had made that investment to try and learn this stuff. So in your early years as you start your career, the degree has given you a foundation. It's given you a place to start, but try and be an open book. There's that stuff that you learned in class. Yes, it was taught this way. Sometimes you get shocked when you get into the workplace and the instruction is taking you in another direction. So listen, have an open mind, follow through with it. Somewhere along the way, it comes together and it makes sense. So one of the ways to differentiate yourself, I think, in my view, is be an open book, learn as much as possible when you get into that work environment.
Okay. Zippy, I would like to hear your opinion on this. How did you stand out? Especially, you're a young lady working in at that time male-dominated industry. How were you able to stand out and become a thought leader as you are now?
Thank you, Dennis. So I'd say that I'd go back to what I presented earlier on personal branding. Remember, it's about what value are you bringing to that organization. So half the time we get caught up in, I'm looking for a job, and forget what's the value that you're bringing into that organization that organization will be willing to pay for. So I'd say the whole aspect of hard work, going the extra mile. So, and especially when we get interns, I mean, people who just come for maybe a 3-month period, that's a very excellent time for you to prove yourself that, look here, even beyond these 3 months, I'm actually someone who can be employed or who you should be looking to employ. But you also find people who just come, they've just been given something small to do. They'll take a whole day to get it done. And also half the time, the people we are getting, they're very sharp people. And humility lacks. So people are not willing to get feedback and, like Willis has said, to continuously improve. So it's about the brand that you project, that you're someone that is willing to continuously learn, someone who is willing to continuously improve, to take in both positive and negative feedback, but also people like working with good people. So it's important over and above your technical skills to just be a nice person. So sometimes you interact with people and they're very sharp, but you're sure you don't want to interact with them again because they left such a bad taste in your mouth. So just be a nice person, work on your social skills as much as you're working on your technical skills.
And I think just to add on to that, speaking from an audit environment, so there's 15 or 20 of you who've been recruited from all these universities across the country. All of you at some point were top of your class. All of you at some point did some crazy thing. All of you are a genius in your own right. What then matters is what kind of personality are you bringing to the table? Are you humble and nice, as Zipporah has mentioned? Or do you believe the world should bow at your feet because you're this smart individual? And so over the years, we found guys who have been number one on ACCA exam at the global scale. But when you interact with this individual, you would never tell. They have that level of humility. They have that kind of personality. And so when you put in a pool where everyone is number one at something somewhere, that is one of the ways in which it differentiates.
Humility. That was inspiring. Yeah.
Yes, and then it's just maybe to add, between working with a very sharp person who is very arrogant and an average person who is very humble, I'll choose the latter.
Okay.
Yeah, we're all human beings at the end of the day.
Yes.
I hate to be honest.
Very true. So I think the following question, fits what we were actually talking about. The question is, what makes a good, accountant or a good finance person past the professional qualification? Because even as we speak right now, there's so many people who have done the ACCAs and the CPA, but what will make them stand out in the accounting background when they come into KPMG? What do you use to tell that this person will make it in the audit or in the finance career?
I'm guessing that one is mine.
Yeah.
What makes a good accountant? It's a tricky question.
Yeah.
The common thread, I think, as a start, is attention to detail. So making sure you know your numbers. So even if you're looking at let's say a reconciliation of bank balances, from day one you've spent time to understand what those numbers mean, and you're able to articulate that in plain English to anyone who asks you. And so the attention to detail on every little number that is put in front of you. How does it tie, and does it tie to zero? So the guys who are always going the extra mile and being anal and making sure it ties to zero, I think that's one example of a good accountant. Speaking as an accountant as well, the guys outside the accounting profession have nicknamed us bean counters. And what that means is we count every penny. The reality is somebody has to. And someone has to make sure the money is being spent in a way that adds value to the business and adds value to everyone who's a stakeholder. And so the accountant has to be the bean counter. He has to be the one to make sure he can follow through and follow the money trail and account for all the transactions. And so I am yet to see an accountant who doesn't know where 100 bob or 50 bob has gone. It can't work. Yeah, you've got to be able to I think have that attention to detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even for Zipporah, even in your team, what makes someone succeed in finance, as you say?
I think it more or less aligns to what Willis has said. It's about not just for me in finance, not just having the numbers, but also understanding what do those numbers mean. So it's more than just the art, but also just getting to know the story behind it. So in a finance world, a mistake could actually mean that you paid money to the wrong person and you might never get it back. So just the whole aspect of keenness, attention to detail, accuracy, not just wanting to take a story from a superficial level, but wanting to know what is beneath. Those are some of the things that make a good accountant. And in the current world also, what decisions then do we make out of those numbers? So it's all good enough to have management accounts. It's all good enough to know what these numbers they're at. But then beyond that, what decisions do we need to make as a result of how those numbers are looking like? So it's more of a wider view and perspective, and not just necessarily the number crunching. That doesn't mean that the number crunching is not an important facet.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is asking, some students have done courses as actually even Zipporah highlighted, because of, you know, prestige or the industry, but it's not really what they want to do, or even they have, you know, some family pressures. How easy is it? How easy is it to transition from, you know, what you've studied in school to something that you've never studied for, but it's still your passion, as you said, you know? Zippy, I think it would be fit if you answer this question first, because it's something that you had highlighted before.
Exactly. I think it's a true reality, especially for people my generation. A number of us ended up in careers because our parents believed that, you know, that's the way to go. And I recall, like, my small sister really wanted to do a mass communications course, and my dad was like, if you're not doing an accounting course, I'm not sure I want to pay that school fees. So granted, we found ourselves in careers that not, was it up to us to make the call? Maybe we could have made a different choice, but it is what it is. So I think the whole aspect of just first accepting that fact and then asking yourself, if it wasn't accounting, so perhaps I found myself in accounting, but what I wanted to really do is journalism. Nothing stops me from getting my way into media and talking about business news. So I think it's just being conscious about it and then looking for opportunities that would align your passion and your talents to that which you're currently doing. Because I mean, after investing 4 or 5 years in a degree, you know, you want to get value out of it. But I also know someone who he finished his BCom course, and I guess he just did it for his parents. But what he had always wanted to be was to become a pilot. So immediately he graduated, he just got an opportunity with KQ to do his pilot course, and today he's a pilot. So there's also the reality of it. You might want to pursue something, but maybe the resources at the moment don't allow you to do that. So I also say there's a difference between passion and what brings food on the table. So as it is now, do the best with what you have, but strive, resources allowing, strive to find yourself in an area where you feel you're addressing your passion or your talents are getting better utilized. So that's the balance that I would offer to such a person.
Oh, great. Willis, kindly add a bit onto this.
I think using two examples. So one of my family members went through law school. She didn't particularly enjoy law. For whatever reason, she literally just managed to survive law school. Okay, so it was very clear that's not what she wanted, but for whatever reason, she ended up doing a law degree. And so when she was done, she somehow found herself spending a lot of time on digital media and working on digital strategies and things along those lines. And so what happened is she ended up joining a law firm, but as a digital strategy and media manager. And so what she does is, as part of the business development team, she's in charge of their digital content. So she runs their LinkedIn page, Facebook, and so on and so forth. She's also part of the events team where they make sure they're able to broadcast live and all that. And what shocked me when she started her first job, her starting salary was equivalent to what we pay new hires at KPMG. Yeah. And so, number one, it opened my mind to that in the world that we live in, there's a whole different direction of careers that are showing up, and careers that people are willing to pay handsomely for. And so it's then up to you young people to have the guts to pursue those types of interesting different things. Another example, still in my family, but in my wife's family, one of her siblings, very smart, straight A's from Kenya High, joined Kenyatta University to do computer science, sat for one semester and quit to join the music department and arts department at Kenyatta University. The family almost lost their minds. You want to go and do what? Music and arts, and you are in the computer science class. I mean, it's ridiculous. What are you doing? Have you lost your mind? And so it was tough. It was not easy. Number one, getting through the pushback from the family. And then number two, you're not sure whether this whole thing will work out. And so eventually, when I look at her now, number one, she was extremely passionate about music, 150% passionate about music. And so she went through the music and arts degree at the university. She managed to, number one, start her own hustle as a music teacher. And so teaching lessons to different kids around the neighborhood and so on and so forth. And then through those contacts, she was introduced to the Kenya Conservatoire of Music, where she ended up being a director there. And then right now she's working with Briban as one of the music teachers. And so easily competing with me in terms of, if you were to look at the money, having pursued her passions. And so the key for her is she wasn't just a music teacher. She wasn't just passionate about music. She's arguably one of the best people in town in relation to that craft. And so, yeah, pursue your passions. Make sure it's your passion and that you're willing to give it 200%, because that is what it will demand for you to be successful at it. Alternatively, you could have gone back and been a lawyer or a computer science guy and then be one of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll join the last two questions, which are, if you're in a career, if let's say you didn't get to complete your papers in CPA, but you still, maybe because of even financial issues, but you still want to stand out in the organization that you're working in, what can you really do? And also there's this course called CFA. How does it fare with CPA in the finance and accounting profession? So first of all, tell us how to stand out when you've not completed when you haven't actually completed all your papers, and how does CFA fare with CPA?
So I'll answer that using a real experience that I had late last year, I think. So there was this girl who I was interviewing for a particular position in my finance department, and you know, she walked into the interview room, and she had a difficulty in raising funds to even forget her CPAs, to even get her degree done. So she finished her degree, thankfully. She's an orphan, staying with her relatives, and you know, but for the funds, she could actually have pursued her CPA course. And just listening to her and her sincerity, and considering that she also had competition with people who had finished their degree courses and had even finished their CPAs, I still opted to hire that girl. And up to today, she's one of the most reliable people that I can count on. So things do happen. You might find yourself in a situation whereby the resources are not available. But provided you have done your best with what you have, I'd say don't beat yourself too hard. So it's an added advantage to have it, but if things don't allow, when the resources allow, then you can go ahead and do that. But I'm also aware that in most organizations, mine included, and I believe even for Willis it would be the same, if you hire people who've not gone through a professional course that you consider to be important, those organizations also sponsor those employees to finalize on those courses. So that's also something to just consider. Relationship between CFAs and the accounting world, I would say it all depends on how you see yourself in a few years from now. Do you see yourself working in a finance department? Do you see yourself as a financial analyst? If it's the latter, then you're better off with a CFA as opposed to a CPA. But both of them are very complementary to finance and accounting jobs. And maybe Willis could also step in and add something.
Sure.
Willis, yeah, shed some light, kindly.
Yeah, so yeah, Zipporah is correct in the sense that even at KPMG and other big fours, we do recruit guys who have not necessarily finished their CPAs, and we then do sponsor and pay for those individuals to complete that course. When I am interviewing, let me speak for myself, and I'm interviewing someone who is particularly in the BCom class and has not finished CPAs, the question I always ask is, I ask that person to account for their time. So you've done BCom, at least if I remember, BCom had fewer units than BBIT and was fewer years than engineering. And so at the back of my mind, I know a good proportion of the BCom class have also completed their CPAs. And so if you haven't completed, there's all these reasons why, but what did you do with that time? Account for your time. What else did you do if you are not slugging the CPA exams? And so people then have very interesting and different things that they did that added on to what they are able to put on the table. So if you haven't finished your CPAs, were you watching movies and series in your room, or were you attending a webinar organized by Dennis on a Friday evening? So at the end of the day, you have to account for your time one way or the other. At least that's my perspective. What was the second question?
How does CFA fare with CPA in the industry?
Oh yes, so my personal experience with the CFA in particular, my own view is that is another example of a passion project. I have seen very many exceptionally smart individuals get hammered by that CFA exam. There's a reason why there's, I don't know, less than 40 CFAs in Kenya. The last time I checked, it was 30. That exam is no joke. It is almost a calling to be a CFA. And so unless you have the passion to sacrifice almost everything to commit to do that exam, weigh your risks and return in terms of the CFA exam. I've seen guys who are brilliant at KPMG, and they were sure they were going to pass that CFA exam. No, it didn't happen because it requires a certain level of commitment over and above the brain power that you bring on the table. And so my caution would be take it carefully. If you're passionate about it, if you have the networks in terms of private equity and insurance and actuary, and you have a support system, go for it. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, how inspiring. I think we should now, we're near the end of this webinar. It's been very interesting, even on my side. I mean, I've learned so much talking about all the aspects of life, standing out, you know, continuously being relevant, having a passion, you know, trying to make a difference, being confident. I mean, it brings so much. I just like to thank you, and I'd like to also give this opportunity to you to, you know, give a sort of to conclude this webinar, and also hear you out. You can tell us how to reach out to you on other platforms, you know, how we can also get to network with you. So over to you, Willis.
I think a good way to get in touch with me would be through Eric, in terms of keeping the process formal. And so one of the things I would like to do is to try and keep in touch with Strathmore. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the university. And so any request through Eric, I'm sure I'll find a way of accommodating it. I think true to Strathmore, this is a good initiative. I can see it's being run by one of the students. It's a good way of spending your time. I think it's valuable. I wish I had this opportunity when I was still at the university. It would have been very useful. And so, well done. Keep it up, and look for more ideas and how to make productive use, as we are all working from home and everything else.
Yeah.
And so, good stuff.
Zippy, let's hear from you.
Okay, so first is to say thank you, Eric, for giving us this platform to just have this conversation with the students, and thank you, Dennis, for doing an excellent work on just coordinating the session. So my final remarks is go for it. You got what it takes. Don't settle for anything less. And above all, strive to leave a mark wherever you're at. So all the best as you look for those jobs. Eric will give you my email address. Let's connect. You can reach me out on LinkedIn as well, and we can connect some more. And we are happy to be of help whenever you need us and whenever you need a hand. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zipporah. I'd also like to give this opportunity to thank Eric for inviting me for this session. I have some deep gratitude for enabling me to be here with you. I think you should give the last vote of thanks as we end this session.
Very well, Dennis. Just to echo what Zipporah said, you've done a good job to moderate the session and keep the conversation lively. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank our two panelists, Zipporah and Willis, who agreed to be here today to have this conversation. Willis, we had met last year at an alumni event. for his class, and at that time he told me he would be ready to help. And so when I needed his help, I reached out to him, and I want to thank him that he was gracious enough to accept very quickly. And Zipporah reached out to us through one of our lecturers, Dr. Godfrey Madigu. And when I asked her about this session again, she was quickly ready to diarize it so that she can have this session. I want to thank all the participants, the students who've been on this session. We thought that we'll be running, we'll have a 1 hour session, but the conversation was good. And so we went half an hour more. I want to thank you for your patience to be here, the questions you've had. As the Alumni Office, one of our strategies is we want to link the students with the alumni. And so these sessions, and we hope this is the beginning of many, precisely at this, to bring alumni to share their experiences with us, but also to create opportunities to network. Zipporah didn't tell us, but this is another conversation for another day. She does coaching. So these are interesting opportunities that we want to make available to our students, and we hope that we will have other sessions. We invite other alumni and then maybe go to specific topics, specific careers to discuss that. So I want to thank everyone for creating time, for being here on this Friday evening. We hope to reach out to you again when we have other sessions. We've been trying to have a weekly event on Thursdays, touching on different topics, and we will try to communicate with you as well. Join us and follow us on our social media platforms so that you get to know more things. And I will be happy, the Alumni Office will be happy to facilitate the connection with Willis and Zipporah for further mentoring or activities that we can organize in future. Otherwise, I want to thank you all for the session. I want to ask you to stay safe, keep well, take care of the people around you, and do have a good weekend.